Good morning. My name is Chaplain David Knight. I am the Wing Chaplain for the 19th Airlift Wing at Little Rock Air Force Base. I wanted to talk to you very briefly about how we as religious support teams can better cope with traumatic experiences we face in doing ministry, especially in a deployed location where we might endure the tragedy of casualties, supporting our troops who are facing adversity, or some graphic tragedies or casualties that we might encounter. Perhaps we might be working in a medical unit or in a hospital, and with peer-to-peer adversaries on the horizon at some point potentially. I felt it would be good to share with you some lessons learned from my toolkit that I've gained that helped me gain an understanding on how to better cope with what I call combat ministry trauma. To give you a little bit about my background, I've been in the Chaplain Corps 19 years. Before that, I was a civilian United Methodist minister for 15 years. I've had 4 deployments, 3 of which were to Baghdad, Kandahar, and Bagram. And of those 3 deployments, I supported and did ministry for the Army morgue at Baghdad Airfield, or BIAF, during most of 2008. And then I was with Kandahar Airfield, where I supported the Navy Role 3 hospital, and we suffered a lot of casualties, both from incoming direct fire, indirect fire, as well as several of our Air Force members who were killed in action. Less than a year later, I was en route to Bagram Airfield, where I was the lead chaplain at Craig Joint Theater Hospital, where we were daily doing trauma ministry, supporting our casualties, supporting even wounded civilians and Afghani military, and we were taking care of the staff. So needless to say, I've had a lot of encounters with traumatic ministry experience, traumatic traumas that people have gone through or that I've gone through if I've seen dead and wounded. I don't keep numbers except roughly, but I would say that I've dealt with probably 100 or more killed, 1,500 wounded during my last three deployments. I wanted to share with you real briefly, and I say that, I emphasize that so that this doesn't belabor long, but some insights that I've gained on how to best deal with trauma that I, as a religious support team, or as a chaplain and member of a religious support team, have dealt with. And I'm going to just read these to you, but also share with you from my heart. As far as coping with trauma that we experience, I tend to follow the principle of the Catholic priest Henry Nouwen, who developed the concept of being a wounded healer, that we bring our wounds and our pain into ministry experiences so that out of our brokenness, God can bring wholeness to others. And as we own that brokenness and admit that we're not whole healers, but wounded healers, we can share words of grace and hope and better deal with our own pain. And as part of that, I would say that one bottom line principle that is critical is self-care. It's essential in order to cope, survive, and truly be effective as we face adversity for ourselves and for others. Sometimes we're expected to be strong, to just grin and bear it, to somehow, endure. And if we show weakness, as I've heard sometimes even line officers or commanders say, if you show weakness or pain, it's going to hurt others. I don't believe that's true. I don't believe you have to wallow in that pain, but I do believe that you need to own it and have good self-care. And part of that is being transparent. I believe that transparency, as a second point, is a key to being healthy as a person. Regardless of whether you ever deploy to a war zone or not, you need to be a person of transparency as a member of a religious support team. I found, though, that transparency about the nightmares that I suffered after seeing soldiers cut in half by shrapnel and by explosions in both Afghanistan and Iraq, or being with others as their friends died in the trauma room or in the hospital. As I was transparent about how those experiences affected me, I believe it gave others hope. And I also believed it made me more open to deal with the pain that I felt, that I experienced. And I think it was also a benefit to my religious affairs airmen that worked with me to see that if a chaplain can struggle with these things and be transparent, then I can too. So I think transparency not only helps you, but it gives others permission to grieve. And owning grief is how we gain wholeness. Third, I believe training is critical. And I've been to Fort Dix and been through those experiences at what we used to call combat airman skills training and expert training 3 or 4 times before my deployments. But I also believe that applying life experience helped me to flesh out my training. I was blessed in that I had so many years in parish ministry, that I had CPE, working with a year with the Army at Brooke Army Medical Center, that I had some of these life experiences to flesh out the training that I experienced. But the reality is there's a lot of on-the-job training. There's some things you can't prepare for as you get to a war zone. I worked trauma for a year in the Brooke Army Medical Center, a level 1 trauma center in San Antonio, but nothing prepared me for what I saw when I saw a soldier who had experienced an IED. It was unimaginable. And so realizing that training is a never-ending process. We get exposed and we get some tools for the toolbox, but you've got to apply those tools and use those life experiences to make a difference. And last of all, an underlying principle of how we can make a difference, whether you're a junior officer, whether you're a colonel or a lieutenant colonel, whether you're a senior NCO or an NCO, is applying good leadership. I can honestly say that good leadership is critical to the resilience of a religious support team. Out of my 4 deployments, I'm sad to say that I only had 1 chaplain that really was a leader in times where I needed a leader, that made decisions for the team that were critical and timely and helpful. And that chaplain kept me on the rails. That lieutenant colonel, and I was still a captain at the time, helped me to be better and not bitter, to own my pain, encouraged me to get counseling with some of our Army friends, the family life trained chaplains that the Army has in these locations. And this was during high combat ops tempo, so your experience might be different. But that wing chaplain, that lead chaplain, was a critical component, and it's been the same thing with senior NCOs and good NCOs or superintendents in deployed locations. Being a healthy leader, not adding to the drama or the trauma of your team, is a critical component. And unfortunately, I'm not sure always in the chaplain corps that is our experience. And I've heard too many war stories of folks that didn't have good leadership, and the trauma they experienced from the war and from the combat affected them more adversely. I hope some of these principles will help you or have helped you in your journey. Remember, take care of yourself, take care of your team members, be a wounded healer. Don't have the facade of trying to have it all together, and make a difference for those airmen around you. Be God's light in the midst of the darkness. Thank you.